Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Anastasia podcast. We have a little bit of a different setup in our podcast room now. I really wanted to have a table. Some of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, everybody sits around a table, and I really like that. That way, I'm not holding things in my lap. I can grab resources that I want to access and like touch base upon in a podcast right next to me instead of reaching for them from the floor. But also, I think when I originally designed the office, I really loved the co-working space of like an oversized double desk where Matt and I could both sit on our respective sides of the table and just get work done. Matt ended up only sitting at the table once a year, and it was to do taxes. We're very mobile, most of the time if I'm working on my laptop, I'm like downstairs at the kitchen table or on the couch or something like that. So in theory, it was really nice to get to disassemble that last month when we ended up hosting family for a family wedding. We got to set this whole room up as a guest room. And that kind of was just like a little like, okay, let's do something different. So I'm really liking this setup. I hope you guys like it too. It's just a little bit different. And since finding out that we're having another girl, eventually this room will be Magnolia and the future sister's bedroom. Matt will build some type of a custom, 2-level bed thing. They'll have their play area in here, etc. This will all be very easy to shift into the back bedroom, which is a much smaller bedroom. This is just a much bigger room for two girls to share. So that is going to be like exciting. And then I love that I'll be able to keep a lot of the similarity. Maybe I'll want to completely like rebrand the podcast by then. I'd love to like do a different photo shoot for the podcast, but I'm going to be honest with you. Moms know when you're like pregnant, not pregnant, pregnant again, like you go through so many changes. Just even my face doesn't look like my face to me a lot. And I had a podcast that I recorded on nannies, babysitters, and au pairs. And I actually was wearing this dress. It was about a month ago. And I was wearing a headband, earrings, and a necklace. And I was like, I look like a freaking clown. Like I was watching it. And it like reminds me of all those reels that you see where it's like getting ready in your luteal phase or getting ready like this many months postpartum. You just sometimes don't see it and it's just like an awkward time. It's hard to like feel your best, look your best, etc. And, a lot of people will say like, it doesn't matter. Why do you care? Well, I would like to invite somebody else to sit down and record a whole podcast and then watch yourself back while you're editing it. It's very like, it's you and the camera and you're just looking at it. And when you're like, oof, that's not my best look, it's a lot to stomach, especially when you are pregnant or postpartum or whatever, your hormones are already getting the best of you. So had to scrap that whole podcast. It's okay. I was saying to Matt, so, all right, I'm all over the place, but this is how these podcasts go when I haven't recorded in a bit. Prior to June, Matt and I recorded 2 podcasts because I knew my podcast room was going to be out of commission for about 2 weeks. We hosted family. Then a week after that, my sister slept over. She babysat Magnolia. Matt and I went to the Jack Johnson concert. It was on Matt's bucket list like the entire time I've ever been with Matt. He loves Jack Johnson. Magnolia loves Jack Johnson. That was her go-to listening album ever since she was a newborn. Anytime she did a sink bath, we turned on In Between Dreams, and that is like what would kind of be her routine to fall asleep. So that was really fun to get to do that. But then we were like, all right, we're not going to disassemble the whole podcast or the whole guest room to make it back into a podcast room because we don't have a guest room anymore. The following week after that, we had another wedding. June has just been absolutely crazy to us. It is the beginning of July. It's July 2nd. I'm 23 and a half weeks pregnant. Last month was an absolute doozy for us. I remember at the beginning of June looking at our family calendar, and it's taxing because I'm pregnant and I only have so much energy every day. And if you overdo it one day, it's not just like, oh, wow, I got a lot of stuff done. You are borrowing energy from tomorrow. So you better plan tomorrow to take it easy. And it's just day by day, little by little, it's okay. It was good. We got to see a lot of people. We got to do so much. Matt had a 2-week vacation in that he put in last winter for June. His plan was to do a lot of excavation work in the backyard. Then it ended up like that was overlapping with when we had 2 weddings and the concert and all this stuff, and then it was like he wasn't able to maximize on his time off, and then we weren't gonna rent a machine, and then we ended up buying a mini excavator, and then it has just been crazy. We celebrated Matt's grandma's 89th birthday. Magnolia started going to bed between 10 and 11 PM, and what started out as like a one-off thing turned into a few weeks of it, turned into our daughter goes to bed between 9 and 11 every single night, and I'm pretty sure it's illegal because she's 1 years old. And it is seriously the best thing that ever happened to our family. I'm telling you, if you have a kid that does not sleep and you are like, what the is going on? Give yourself permission to find what that baby's groove is. Because again, there's all this information out there of like, this is what you should do, and this is the schedule you should get your kid on, etc. Literally just Magnolia every single night, 8 o'clock onward, she becomes this really mellow, extremely pleasant. She is like in such a good place now, but she is this mellow little toddler who just, we turn the lights down. It's bath time is done. We're usually like, she was in the pool for an hour with my sister and my brother yesterday, but she gets in this mellow jello mood. She like will look at her stickers. She'll read some books. She's playing with her magnetiles. She like, I have these diamond art magnets for the fridge that are all donuts. She will like look at them, stack them. She zones. And then I will ask her when she's ready, I'm like, do you want to go upstairs and go rocka rocka? Do you want to go get your Mutsy, her stuffed animals? And she'll literally look at me and be like, okay. She holds my hand. We walk upstairs. I'll rock like a minute maybe with her on the rocking chair, not even, maybe like half, like 30 seconds. And then she points to her crib. She wants to go in her crib. And it is, then she's sleeping until like 8:30, 9:30. And okay, yeah, in the summer that's a little hard, right? Because sometimes maybe you want to go to the beach first thing in the morning. I will take it. That her being on this schedule, we are getting like, she only napped 1.5 hours yesterday. And then, but the day before she napped 3 hours. 2 days before then, she didn't nap. But surprisingly, she was in just really good spirits all day. It wasn't like, oh, my kid missed a nap and she's throwing a tantrum. We are just taking it day by day. And I'm telling you, I'm like, I love 1.5. I love 1.5. It is like the reward of the hardest year and a half of my life. It is such a joy. She's so fun. She's so loving. She's so smart. She's so kind. She's like knows our family. It's just the best. And I keep hearing from everyone, it just keeps getting better. And then it makes us so excited. And I keep thinking of that trend that you see on social media, the sibling effect. Anytime I catch her in her own little world, I can't help but think like in the future, when she's in her own little slice of like her imagination, it's going to be her and her sister. And it literally, as a mom, it just brings me so much joy. And I just like pray that the rest of this pregnancy goes well, smooth, healthy. Bringing baby into this world is like, goes off without a hitch. And I am just really excited for what's to come. I know there's going to be challenging, testing, growing moments. I just am so excited that she gets a sister. Like, we are thrilled. And I'm just so excited to get to see her have a built-in best friend for her life. And I'm sure there's going to be moments, just like in anything else, but it's really crazy to think about your life in a sense of a dream. And I'm like, sometimes I feel like our life is a dream. And that's an even a crazy statement to say because so much of life, right, is social media, the comparison, you being very aware of like what you don't have, where you're not at yet, etc. And this all ties into like the craziness of June, just how I've been feeling the past few weeks. I'm like, it is really time to pull back and really just be present in my little bubble of life and my family, our needs, what we're going through. I say this every time, but it's so much easier said than done. It's such a slippery slope getting sucked back in to just social media and the world, and you should be doing more and you should be trying harder. And sometimes it's like, but you're in the season of preparation for the next thing. I have to remind myself, Anastasia, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and stop feeling like you should always be adding more to the plate. I was talking to my best friend yesterday and I was talking about the strength that you get becoming a parent. And it doesn't feel like it when you become a first time parent because you're like, what the heck just happened? But actually, day after day, week after week, month after month, you are developing a strength that you could not possess when you were the individual you. I think about Anastasia, 30 years old, no kids, just so fixated on like my wants, my goals, like what me and my husband are doing, etc. You, first of all, just become physically stronger. You think you're all there, and you are. I'm not discrediting it. It's just different because you're at a new level of multitasking and also being like really putting in the effort on things that are important. And what's important? Raising a good kid, giving them the opportunity to just learn, grow, be, do, advance, soak in the world, and then you're finding pockets for yourself, and then little pockets that you find for yourself, you're maximizing that time and you're going further than you did before, and it's just crazy. So even though I'm not on paper as far as I'd like to be with like our business and all these other things, that is my own head game that I have to keep like bringing myself down to and being like, Anastasia, that time will come. It's not that far away, but like you're doing exactly what you should be doing right now. You're growing your family. The one thing I would like to work on and get a lot better at is the consistency with my podcast. I think in this season of life, yes, it's the season of life, but everything that I need is available to me within my home. And that is why like this needs to be prioritized because I think things will come up in life and I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to go do this. And I think like, okay, well, I'll just work on the podcast when she's sleeping or whatever. And it's always contorting it instead of just carving out time for it. And I need the consistency of just doing this more in routine because it's going to make me enjoy it more because there's so much that I like to share every week. And instead of it backlogging and then them being these huge episodes that I have to edit, etc., just getting in this flow. And then when certain topics come along, like I never finished the book Fair Play, and that is about sharing the load healthily between a husband and wife of not just home responsibilities, but child responsibilities. And as your children grow and evolve, their different needs, different ages, different friend groups, etc. Never finished that. Wanted to do a podcast on that. Never did the podcast on Beyond the Pill, the book about fixing your hormones post birth control and getting yourself ready for your fertility journey with your husband when you're ready to have kids. That is still such a goodie, and I feel like would be so helpful. I've wanted to, since I had Magnolia, do a podcast on like pumping and breastfeeding 101. I want to like have all my stuff out. I have a whole storage bin that I'm going to have to be getting out for the next baby, but I remember as a first-time mom being like, "What the heck is any of this stuff?" Like you're learning about flange sizes, you're learning about different pumps. Like I bought like the Ferrari of breast pumps at the time because I was like, I'm going to invest in this because I'm going to have a few kids. And I ended up absolutely hating my pump. Don't even want to look at it. Do you think I sold it? No, because I'm like, well, maybe next time I'm not going to use it. I'm going to keep using a hand pump because that's my saving grace. It's just, you don't know what you don't know. And I'd love to be a resource to share the things that I did learn from walking through it for the first time to maybe help other moms, either first time moms or women walking through similar scenarios. So, anyways, getting in a routine of just being more organized, I think will give me like a little bit of a sense of purpose. I want to carve out my own little corner in this space in the world. And I just want to do this for me. And then if it helps anyone, wonderful. But it like brings me a lot of joy. So anyways, today I kind of already talked about like how crazy June was for us. And now I actually sat down the night of June 30th. I ripped off June on our family calendar that hangs on the fridge. And I realized the last sheet in the whole like thing that sticks on the fridge is July. So I'm like, I have never gone through a whole calendar. Even when I buy planners, there's like months that are just neglected and your planner's like empty for all those weeks. I'm like, go me. I've been consistent with this and it's a like, it's a learning thing, but again, it's more kids, more responsibility, more things to keep track of. You would think I had a baby appointment this morning. I write that stuff down. I know I don't trust my brain. It was like 8:10 this morning and Matt's like, wow, you're being like really lackadaisical for someone who has an appointment in an hour. I swear I levitated off our bed and flew off. I was like, I forgot. I literally, I forget everything. So writing things down is the only saving grace I have. And maybe Matt seeing it written down is what prompted him to be like, you have an appointment today. But it made me realize like July is very crazy for us. And that kind of goes right into August, which is going to be busy. And then September, I don't know what we have forecasted yet, but I'm like, oh, is September going to be my only month to like get above water when I'm gonna be like 8 to 9 months pregnant, and then what? Baby comes in October. So I love being in the position where I can kind of look at things like that, and I'm an external processor. So I was talking with Matt the following day. We had a chance to talk for like an hour before he went to work, and it really made me look at what does our family need? Because I don't wanna be on autopilot. I don't wanna be flying from one thing to the next, and then feeling like every single day we're just trying to get above water. Something that I have been doing for the past 3 weeks that I'm very proud of is I wake up every day and I put on athletic shorts and I put on a sports bra and I get on socks and my sneakers. Matt goes and he hikes the dog. I don't hike the dog anymore. It's one, too hot. I think it's too hard for my breathing too. Being pregnant, it's just, and this has only worked out because Magnolia's been going to bed later and waking up later. I get on the walking pad. Matt hikes the dog. Sometimes I'm able to shower and fully do my makeup and start with work on my laptop or start on my notebooks or journals or whatever. And I get this like whole window of time. And I'm not waking up at 4 a.m. before my kid. I'm waking up at like 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30. But I'm just, it makes such a difference. And again, when you're in the season of life where you're not getting any time before your kids wake up to yourself, etc., it feels like you're new forever. And it is until it's not. It does get better. So just hang on. And I know also being in this season, it's not going to be like this forever because we're going to have another little one. And Magnolia is not always going to be sleeping in and etc. You just have to be flexible and willing to take it as it comes. And that's hard too, because sometimes we just want to know the plan. What is the plan? But we're just all doing our best. In order to keep this week's podcast a little short, I thought I was going to record 2 podcasts this week and do a Real Housewives of Rhode Island recap. But my friend Val, who I would like love to chit chat about this, she right now lives in Georgia or Alabama. I can't remember one of them. It's terrible. I'm blaming mom brain because her husband's in flight school for the next like 2 years. She is like the best to discuss stuff like this with because, again, I don't want to talk about anything reality TV show related, like in a gossipy sense, because I don't want this to be like a gossip podcast. And I more think like there's such a variety of people who end up watching reality television, and we're all looking at it from different lenses. And I really like the dissection of what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, etc. I always try to look at and think about whenever I'm watching a reality TV show from the lens of these people are willing to allow people into their life 360 and be this exposed and this on display. So I feel like it's owed the respect of when you communicate and you're, trying to just understand, process, I guess, what you're seeing for yourself to talk about it in a respectful way instead of talking about the people as if they're not people. You know what I mean? Like I want to keep the humanity in it. All that being said, this isn't gonna be a podcast where I dive deep about Real Housewives of Rhode Island, but I was watching the reunion while on the treadmill and I was like, "Oh, this is great. Like, I'll just watch half an hour at a time." Because I usually try on the walking pad to do about a mile a morning. And that to me, I'm not originally I wanted to do like 5,000 steps and I'm like, this is taking way too long. I'm just really pregnant. I still aim. I hit my step goal every single day, but it's just a really long time to dedicate an hour to a treadmill. And I'm like, I already run around enough after Magnolia that it ends up working out. But I'm aiming for like around 3,000 steps, etc. After the whole season of Real Housewives of Rhode Island, I was just left like really confused about the whole Rula thing because I think everybody watching, it's just so easy to be like, it's broken. Like it is broken. But that you could even dive into because I've loved watching other people's theories, like people from legal perspectives. I remember thinking like, well, maybe like their prenups. I was thinking each of them probably have a prenup, but I know sometimes in prenup there's contingencies based on like if one person has infidelity, then they're going to end up forfeiting XYZ. So I was like, I wonder if Brian is basically waiting for her to initiate a divorce or whatever. And then, you have to take a step back and think about like divorce is a big deal, but also cheating is a very big deal. So I don't, I just know that they have a lot on their plates. And then even the force that Joellen would like bring regarding that whole thing, I think any sane person would do that too, who was made out to be a liar or a manipulator on national television. I think we all have that like girl streak in us where it's like, no, like you think this is a lot? No, I can be a lot. So it's been a very entertaining season. I'm really looking forward to season 2, and I'd love to discuss, all of season 1 at length, but I'll either have to figure out how to do like a video podcast or something like that and make sure I'm not compromising on like quality and things like that. The last thing that I want to cover in today's podcast is some books that I'm currently reading that I just finished. And then I was going through my Audible and I realized I have a couple books that I'm reading that I literally forgot that I'm reading. So I want to kind of go over all of them. A book that I'm listening to right now that I just started last night is Cancel Me If You Can by Dave Portnoy. I pre-ordered this book at some point in June. It just got released yesterday. And I am about an hour maybe in, and I love it. Dave Portnoy, he's not my favorite person in the world, but I don't dislike him. I always love and appreciate someone who just they figure out their own path in life and they're hell-bent on it and they go for it. And the beginning of this book too, he kind of starts off being like, if I could go back, and this guy, he's made it. He is like in his groove. He's like, if I could go back and give back my 7-figure signing deal for this book, I would do it in a heartbeat because that's how much I don't want to do this book. Like, this is going to be a headache. This is so much work. It's not like what I'm into in this season of my life. All that being said, okay, let's friggin' do it. Here's how Barstool Sports started. And just starting out in the first chapter of who he was, like how he remembers himself, how he was wired as a kid, how that translated into like what he cared about, who he was in college, right after college, getting his first job, meeting with all his friends. Like they all got into sales jobs in Boston after college. And he's like, we were all making 80K with our first jobs. And this is like back when, like, I don't know how old he is. Is it 20 years ago? He's like that at the time, that was like great money. We could all just mess around and the guys would get together and watch sports and then all kind of just shoot the shit and talk about different business ideas. He's like, looking back, I think I'm the only one who was taking those conversations extremely seriously because I wanted out of my sales job. Like I wanted to run my own life, be my own boss, etc., which I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are wired like that, it is like everybody loves like a good story like that of how did you do it? What tell us about your tenacity, how you kept going, etc. Then it was just so interesting to hear what the beginning of Barstool Sports looked like. And I love hearing so many times in life when people start pursuing a new venture or an idea, when it feels like doors are closing, that for them feels like, is this a sign? Should I be stopping? Look at all these things that are like all these bumps in the road that keep occurring that are getting in the way of me going. Seeing different people's perspectives on how their brain takes things like that, he just kept going after every bump in the road. And that is so inspiring to listen to because it's like that underdog story and you keep going. And it's just so fun thinking about like a young 20-year-old, just that's what your 20s are for. And you just keep going and going and going. Bumps in the road for him were not bumps in the road for him. And it was really cool to hear his perspective on how he just pushed through each one of these kind of roadblocks. And even hearing about how there was no profit in Barstool Sports for a long time in the beginning, but it's the love of the game. And then this morning I got to talk to Matt about it. And actually, even yesterday when I was talking with Matt and I was talking about my podcast and we were talking about different YouTubers and etc. And he's like, nobody gets into YouTube for money. Nobody gets into podcasting for money. Like, you have to be doing it because you love sharing. And he's like, you love talking. It's just about creating that consistency for yourself. This is what I was talking about when I was like, I want to find my own little like corner of the world and let myself plug in there and take root because that's what it's about. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by like the work that you feel like you need to do to get there, but it's really about the journey. And that's why I love listening to people's different biographies, especially people who you know of and you can, whenever someone who you know of reads their audiobook, it makes it so much better too, because it feels so personal. So I'm still only at the beginning of the book where he's talking about he made the shift from hiring homeless people to pass out issues of Barstool Sports to models in the city, local models, to passing it out because he thought he was kind of like helping the homeless community. And then he realized more than half of them didn't show up for work. And then of the ones who did show up for work, they're like drunk and then they're just taking stacks of their newspaper and just leaving it all over the city, not actually passing it out. And then it just looks like Barstool Sports is littering, etc. So instead of being like, that was the biggest waste of money ever, he's like, okay, that was a huge waste of money, but what can we do different? He's like, would I take a flyer from a homeless person? Probably not. Would I look at it? Definitely not. He's like, who would I take it from? A young, pretty girl. So then plugging into like modeling agencies and things like that. And it's just, that's what life is about. It's about figuring out what's not working or like letting what's not working reveal itself to you. And then what can I tweak? How can I keep going? And just being hell bent on that. Then he talks about how he met his wife, Renee, and how she was like, you know, a great supporter and what the first just few months and I think early years of Barstool looked like of not earning any money, but just it was for the love of the game. And that is just this is the benefit of people sharing their stories. You don't realize how many people something like that is going to help. And it does, because this is the season of life that I'm in. The podcast is for me, it's for the love of the game. It's for literally just sharing and getting to relate to any mom out there or any girl out there who finds herself in a similar season. If it just connects or resonates with one person, that's worth it for me. So if you're looking for a really good audiobook to listen to that you want in the background while you're doing home chores, you're maybe training for a marathon, Vera, it's a really good book. I know people with sports backgrounds might not necessarily like him, but I just like his crass. Like I like people who are no fluff. So alongside that, because that book just came out yesterday, I'm also listening to Open Book by Jessica Simpson. And me and my friend Courtney both downloaded this book. I'm not sure if she's listening to it, but we were looking for a book that the theme of the book is like a strong female sharing her story of like, this is how I broke free from this, and here's how I like pursued my passion. I don't know how many hours I have left. I think I'm at like chapter 6 or 7. I really enjoy this book too. I've already cried 2 times. There's just because there's some like childhood trauma involved in there, and I just like was not expecting that at all. But again, Jessica Simpson sharing this and being so vulnerable and raw. And again, I didn't really follow Jessica Simpson growing up, but I do remember the tabloids, and it's like Jessica Simpson is like gigantic, and then it's like Jessica Simpson is super tiny, and then like she was married to Nick Lachey and she was made to be this social celebrity who was dumb as rocks and all this stuff. And it's just really nice to just, you're getting to know someone through them sharing their story, and then you get to make your own outline of who you feel like that person is. And I've just been really enjoying reading the story, getting to know her from her background. She comes from a very religious background, and I think also coming from a family that fled, you know, Russia for religious freedom, and there being such an emphasis on religion specifically, not even necessarily faith, but more religion growing up. There's so many themes that you feel like overlap with how you were raised, and you can kind of see things from like really big perspectives. And I just, I really, really like Jessica Simpson's story and how she kind of felt like she was gifted with singing. And she started singing actually because she was in a really bad car accident with her mom when she was 2, and it affected her speech and she couldn't talk, but they found that she could sing. So while she was like her brain was healing and things like that, and she was going through developmental stages, she would sing what she needed or wanted or was trying to tell her family. And that was like her segue into singing. And then she got older and they realized how beautiful her voice was. And then she had her own very close relationship with God and felt like he was guiding her in a lot of ways. And something that I really liked in the book is she talked about being a certain type of Christian. And it's like, if you're a really good Christian, then bad things won't happen. And then it's like, okay, if bad things do happen, like, what does that mean for you and your faith and things like that? And I've just been really enjoying the story, and not even being halfway through the book, I'm really looking forward to just how everything kind of unfolds. Two books I recently finished that I really enjoyed. One I enjoyed more than the other. The Guy You Love to Hate by Spencer Pratt was really good. I saw Spencer Pratt across social media when he was running for mayor of LA. I think that's what he was running for. And he would go on some podcast and he was talking about his mayoral, or is it gubernatorial, his mayoral run. And he was also talking about his book. He read his book. It was so interesting it was like a throwback to like young millennia, right? When we were all, I feel like we were in middle school, early high school. It was like the hills, Laguna Beach, all those days. And then hearing from behind the scenes what it was really like filming reality TV back then, and then being the villain and all these things, and him not even watching the show and just doing what producers wanted him to do and making $1 million per episode, even back then, and things like that. It honestly has really shaped the way that I watch reality television now, even down to like Real Housewives of Rhode Island. So much I would watch and I'd be like, I wonder if that was like edited to be like this. And I wonder if this was staged to be like this, and et cetera, because it's all about capturing viewer engagement. And, anyways, I really loved him sharing him and Heidi's love story and how love was kind of never on his radar. But then he brings up there is something that happens when a man comes across the person that God has made for him. It is like a shift in cosmic stars. And like that is your person, and you just know. And that's how I've always felt about love. And it was so special to hear him like talk about that with Heidi, because he was like, I was going to be the single guy forever. I was going to be like the rich uncle, etc. And he just like found something extraordinary once in a lifetime with Heidi, and they have two boys. And then he shares their journey with wanting to become parents, and that was never on his radar either. And then Heidi wanted it, and then they got pregnant, I believe, fairly quickly with their first, but then shockingly to them, it took like 2 years to get pregnant with their second, and how much heartache that was filled with, etc. It was just, I really, really enjoyed that biography. Then I read I Told You So by Macy Neely. She's one of the Secret Lives of Mormon wives. It was just her sharing her life story, but there was a lot in the book that I thought about. Was there a way to share your life story and real things that happened without being so graphic that like your kids could read this one day? There was a lot of like sexual exploitation, I guess, from being like a young, crazy, rambunctious teenager, which is fine. But she was also coming from the perspective of like coming from a very religious background, all these things being so taboo, and then ending up with like abusive boyfriends who were sexually abusive, etc. And then how she would like drink and do drug. I can't remember if she did drugs, so forgive me if I'm remembering incorrectly. But I just kept thinking like your parents are reading this. And again, not to take away from her story. I was just curious if there was a way to make it a little bit less graphic, that it could still like you could still understand what was happening. So for example, Jessica Simpson's story, she talked about being sexually abused at a young age, but it was not crazy graphic. And I was just, I guess, surprised and taken back by the level of graphicness in Macy's book, but it wasn't crazy. But I don't know, maybe I just like wasn't ready for that. But I guess it kind of makes sense with the show. But it was still really good. I enjoyed listening to her story of how there's a lot of heartbreak in there too. Just crazy teenage stuff, and like finding yourself in dark places and having to pull yourself out of like really dark spots in life. And then it's the come up, and then meeting her husband, Jacob, and just feeling like so lucky that she didn't know she would ever be able to feel like this again, and having someone else's baby, but that person died. And it was just crazy. So I really enjoyed that book too. I've really kind of been enjoying biographies, which I'm just really surprised at, because normally I'm reading business books, but I feel like entrepreneurial business books are not landing the same for me in this season of life, because I'm not able to actively work on my business in the way that I want in these entrepreneurial ways where I'm like, clear my schedule. I get to just work on myself for the next 24 hours. That doesn't exist in my life. So I'm really enjoying kind of stories, but like things that are relatable. The last two books that I forgot that I'm reading, one of my friends texted me last week and was like, how is the Highly Sensitive Parent book going? Because she had just ordered it. And I was like, I literally forgot that I ordered that. I had it on Audible. I just looked. I think I'm like 5 minutes into the book. Like I literally started it and never went back to it. But The Highly Sensitive Parent by Elaine Aron is in like humanity, there's highly sensitive people. Highly sensitive parents affect 30 to 40% of the population. And it's based on just how overstimulated you can get through what natural, like raising little kids is. And that's like noises, tantrums, just visual clutter, etc. And you might not have all the like kind of not symptoms, but all the things that are characterized in that world. But something that I relate to is if we have like a series of intense days, that for me ends up burning me out. I'm also pregnant, so I'm processing that. But I really do believe if I overdo it some days, I borrowed energy from a future day. And I'll have to say this to Matt sometimes too, because if we're having like a slow day, Matt is so ultra productive. He's like, I hate this. Like, this feels like such a waste of a day. And I'll be like, all right, let's look at what our just week looked like for the past 7 days. We were nonstop, go, 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 go. We were on absolute autopilot. We did the most. This is bound to happen. This is how life ebbs and flows. And you need to just surrender to like a slower paced day, recoup, regroup, and then you can keep going. So, the highly sensitive parent, too, it does talk about just you getting overstimulated by like kids having tantrums. Something that I relate to in the book, it's the messes. And I've actually sampled a few books on Audible that talk about like if you're neurodivergent, if you have ADHD, how you can kind of reclaim order in your home in not an OCD kind of way, but enough to just help you get through the day to day. Because I know for me, when my house is like a chaotic mess, I really, really struggle because when I was trying to record podcasts in the office the other day, it wasn't finished setting up and I couldn't function in here. And I was like, okay, podcasts are not happening today because I have to clear out this space because I won't be able to function. It's just how I'm wired. I joke and say it's OCD. It's not real OCD. I know real OCD is like it's like compulsive. I just need visual cleanliness and order or I can't think. And I think it's because there's just so many other things going on beyond your control in this delicate stage of parenthood when you have such little kids that little things that you can control, cleaning the sink at the end of every day, it might not be perfect. Like putting Magnolia's bottles in the cabinet after a year and a half was crazy. One, because you just get so on autopilot that I just had them all out on her like special dish rack, like bottle rack, and I got a cute wooden one. I didn't want anything with like crazy colors, etc. But we also didn't have cabinet space. I had to shift a lot of dishes around. But little things like that, like reclaiming little spaces of order, really helps my mental health. And I will say, when the future baby is older and Magnolia and her share this room and we get to move a lot of toys up here, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. What do you mean I'm going to have a living room again? What do you mean? Because we do not have a house that's big enough to have a playroom. And then the last book that I talked about before is Fair Play. And that is somewhere down there. And it's the book that I had the note cards for. And Fair Play by Eve Rodsky was about how to just communicate as you're going through different ages and stages of like, you go from just being the married couple to then having your first kid, then maybe more kids, and then different ages that your kids are. There's different activities, there's schools, there's doctor's appointments, there's dentists, there's sports, etc., birthday parties, gifts, holidays, like how you delegate or share all of those responsibilities to make sure you're not being totally overwhelmed, carrying like the mental load of all of them. Because by default, like through being studied, women do tend to take on a lot more. And every family is different. Listening to this book kind of made me realize like people are at all different levels of communication with their spouses too. Matt and I are 14 years into our relationship together. We have really good communication, but we work towards that and we got to that point. And sometimes people don't have all this time together before they have kids. Sometimes people kind of get pregnant right away or they're meeting later in life, etc. And you're kind of working on building strong pathways of communicating and lovingly respecting each other and helping each other while navigating new identities of becoming parents. So I really had to look at it from an open mind because whenever I'm listening to information like that, I sometimes will like put up a wall because I'll be like, is this like a book about man hating? Because I'm not really into bashing my husband. And I will say the author did a really good job of like kind of saving it and being like, okay, this is not about putting a husband down and saying, I do more and you don't do enough, because that's not constructive. And I'm really glad that she did that, because oftentimes I think women, we do carry a lot and we are doing a lot, and everybody's relationships are different, but sometimes it feels like so good to feel validated. But it like, what is the point of your delivery if you do come and share this with your partner? It should be to like have a good solution for the both of you on the other side of it, not just like a trauma dump, basically. So I was really liking the direction that the book was going, and how the author was kind of instructing the listener to like, listen, before you make any crazy jumps, you have to really work and understand what you have going on, and then how you would like to move forward, and how you're going to present this information. And then it really does a good job of helping you think about like, well, what is your husband kind of fully focused on that you might never have to think about? And I think with Matt and I, because our communication is where it is, and we talk so much about like, Matt is the primary earner right now in this season of life for our family, and him working so much, there's just actually not enough time for him to do certain things. So I don't mind doing the cooking. Does Matt cook sometimes? Heck yeah. Like Matt will step in and do any of that stuff. I cannot believe I forgot to say this. This is a special announcement. For the first time in 14 years of being with my husband, I am officially caught up on laundry. Let that soak in. I am, for the first time in my adult life, caught up on laundry. This has been unimaginable to me in this stage of my life. I thought I was just going to drown in laundry forever. And do you want to know why I am caught up on laundry? Because my husband would every single morning and every night throw in a load, bring it up to our room. And then I would, if I would put Magnolia down, I'd be like, you know what? It's really only going to take 10 minutes. Because of the system that I have, no load takes more than 10 minutes. And I would just fold it and just shut up and put it away. And before I knew it, I have 6 hamper bays in the basement. All 6 of them were empty. And I was like, dude, shut up. Everything had a place. I could not believe it. So anyways, does Matt step in and help with things that are like typically like on me? Absolutely. If he sees it needs to be done, he'll do it. If I ever like couldn't get to the dishes and I had to like run out for an appointment or the grocery store or whatever, I would come home and it would be done. And it's like, I would just feel, I would be so grateful that he would do it, but I would also feel bad if he only has literally like this many hours a week of free time. He could be working on a project or like fixing something in our home that I need him to do, that I would rather do the dishes than him spend his time doing that. But Matt is like always really good about, if he sees something, he'll swoop in and he'll help. But again, we're at a different stage in our relationship where like the communication has been there and the foundation has been laid well for so long. It's not foolproof, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And I think we're both in like a good groove. So anyways, I'm looking forward to finishing that book and doing a review on it. And that's basically all I have for you guys today. This has been the first time I've recorded a podcast in literally over a month. And, on your end, you're going to listen to it all cleaned up and just like perfectly edited, etc. On my end, there were so many times where I was like, I just don't want to keep talking. I just need to get in this groove and get back in the habit. And like, even down to like this dress, that was driving me crazy. I'm telling you, if I button this button, it looks like I'm wearing a freaking turtleneck. And Matt was in here and he's like, you should unbutton that last button. But like, I'm not trying to have my out on social media because I'm a mom now. I practice a little bit of modesty. Anyways, thank you guys all so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. If anybody has any girl names that they think would sound nice with Magnolia, please send them my way. DM me, leave a comment on Instagram or on YouTube. We have no girl names at all. We'll probably cover this in like a future podcast. The only girl name we kind of thought about was Azalea. And we're not even looking for a flower name. It's just like I wanted something unique like Magnolia, but I really don't know how I feel about having a name with an A and a Z in it. I feel like that's going to be hard for a little kid. But sometimes I'll say, like, I say Azalea and I kind of like it, but sometimes I really don't. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys this week. I will catch you soon. See you next time. Bye.